Welcome back, everybody. Good morning. Hope you're all doing well. It is Friday. I know you're a little tired, a little exhausted, but today we're going to play with the most fun part of JavaScript. So I hope I can keep your attention for the time being. If you want to take out your headphones, put your cell phones away, whatever distracting material you might be working on, put it aside for the time being. We're going to get into the good stuff starting right about now. If everyone could navigate in their browser to anatomyofcode.com, we're going to go over some of the slides from Anatomy of Code again. Last time we met, we looked at data types, strings, numbers, booleans. We also took a look at how to create comments in JavaScript, how different types of brackets are used in JavaScript, what variables are and how we use them to store data, how the console can be used for debugging purposes within our apps, computational operators that allow us to combine numbers, strings, and other types of data, concatenation, which is literally the combining of two separate strings to form one, comparison operators, which is checking for equality, greater than, less than. We looked at the differences between the double equals and the triple equals and when we might use them. Now, we decided to stick with the triple equals for the time being. I'll talk about when it might be useful to do double equals later on. We also barely covered the surface of what a logical operator is, but I'm actually not going to go into that too much for today because you won't need it for the time being. What we're going to look at today are functions. So if everyone wants to scroll down to the part on functions right here and do a quick little overview of the reading, I want you to highlight and annotate the keywords that say, especially the parts about defining the function, calling the function, and what each of the keywords like arguments or parameters look like here. So take about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, read through this little brief section, take your notes, and we'll come back here in a sec. So now that you guys have taken a quick look into an overview of what functions are, let's break them down piece by piece. There's two things you can do with functions, really. You can define functions, and you can call functions. What's the difference between those two things? What does it mean to define a function versus to call a function? Yeah, exactly. So first, when we write a function out, we define it. Just like this. And you can see right here, when you define a function, what is the name of the function we defined here in this first little segment? Yeah, the name is say hello. And we define a function by first writing the keyword function. See that right there? If you scroll over it, the keyword is function. And then after the keyword function, we have a space followed by the name of the function. What's the name of this function? Say hello. Now, right after the name of the function, you have what? Parentheses. Yes. And following the parentheses, you have squiggly brackets like this and a little bit of code inside. What is this part right here called? Any remember? Not quite. If you look down at this third paragraph or the second paragraph, yeah, it's called a block. Exactly. Everything inside of these curly braces is called a block statement. This is actually important. Make sure you annotate that in your text. Here, this little segment is called a block. The function, whenever you call the function by saying its name down here, the say hello function, you're telling it run the block of code that we stored when we defined you, just like this. And that's how functions work. You write a function, and inside you write a little bit of block of code, and that code runs when you call the function. Now, this block of code can be pretty much anything. Any valid JavaScript you can put inside here. The reason why we might write functions is that we want to do a couple things. Maybe you want to use this block of code more than once. Maybe you want to use it like 5 times. Once you define it once, you can call it as many times as you want. And that's what makes functions really nice. They help you automate tasks. They help you take one goal that you have and do it as many times as you want without really any overhead. You don't have to rewrite any code. You just say, use this code again, use it again, use it again, use it again, and it will. And we're going to see how we do that in the next little section. There is another way to define functions, and I actually don't like writing this way, but I do want to show you that it exists so you can see it. Some people say var at, like, the name of the function equals anonymous function, and then the parentheses and the block of code. But if you look at this next example, what do we have inside the parentheses here? We have two variables. What are they called? A and B. These aren't just any kind of variables, though. If you have variables inside of the parentheses, we call these variables parameters. And when you give those variables a value, like when we call the function, we give those variables a value of 2 and 4. 2 and 4 are the arguments that get passed into the A and B parameters. So variable addMe is a function that takes in two parameters, A and B, and then it does what? It returns. And return is another important part. Functions always return something. Sometimes that something is undefined or null or empty, but they always return something. Every function takes an input. Sometimes that input is nothing. And every function gives you an output, usually by indicating it with the return symbol. This is how functions work. They're basically input-output machines. And that's going to be like the focus of today's lesson. We're going to create systems that take an input and give you an output. And to do that, we're actually going to write them using a little bit of Google Sheets. So everybody right now, go into your Google Drive. Open up your Google Drive, because we're going to use Google Sheets to talk about functions right now. The Google Apps for Ed has some really, really cool built-in features that make writing code really easy. So we're going to play around with functions, these little input-output systems in this Google Sheets. I'm going to share this with you on Slack, so you can just make a copy of it and work along with me. Everybody ready? Cool. I'm going to end this video now. I'll paste this link into Slack, and we'll get started in a second.